The White House coronavirus task force briefing is back, but this time with only the president on the podium. Amazon Prime Day gets pushed back again, and women's soccer heads to Los Angeles with some big name backers. Here's what you need to know. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need2Know podcast for Wednesday, July 22nd. I am Jill Wagner with Baker Machado, once again filling in for Carlo. Hey, Baker.
Hello. 3 days in a row. I'm loving every moment of this, Jill Wagner, with you.
All right, Baker. It's been a lot of fun. I do want to get to the news, and unfortunately, we have to start with a pretty sad statistic right now. For the first time this month, more than 1,000 people have died of the coronavirus in just one day in the United States. It's about in line with what experts said, that the deaths would trail new cases by about a month. So we're now at more than 142,000 deaths in this country. Meanwhile, New York City has expanded its quarantine to travelers from 31 different states.
Yeah, and Jill, that number, so scary, the 1,000 people dying from the virus in just one day. But the CDC is actually saying right now that the number of cases might be up to 10 times higher than actually reported in some parts of the country. And that's because they're saying, Jill, asymptomatic patients or people who didn't seek medical attention might have continued to spread to their communities. Also, the Justice Department, Jill, has accused a pair of hackers of trying to steal vaccine data for China. We've been hearing a lot of reports about Russia and China in particular really going after whatever the vaccine results are here in the United States.
Carlo had made the point, I think last week or the week before, when we were talking, because there was a time Russia thought to be hacking about the vaccine as well. Look, we should be working together. I mean, the truth is that the scientific community globally should be working together. We understand, obviously, there's profits to be involved in this, but in theory, in a perfect world, we'd kind of all be on the same page 100%. With this stuff anyway.
And by the way, Jill, and I know we're going to talk about the White House here in a moment, President Trump was asked about that yesterday at the White House press briefing. He was asked if China is able to get a vaccine on this, would you work with China given all of the negative things that you've been saying about the country? And he basically echoed the same thing that you just said. We will work with anybody when it comes to getting a vaccine on something like this.
I saw that part too, and it did stick out for me. Quickly on the CDC numbers, the thing is, even though the numbers are a lot higher than they think, experts do not think, unfortunately, that we're anywhere close to herd immunity.
Yeah.
The good news is that if cases are 10, even higher than that, 10 times higher, it means the death rate from coronavirus is actually a lot lower than we think, which is great news. But on the other side, again, that even despite the fact that the numbers are probably higher, again, not close to that herd immunity, which is crucial for slowing this thing down. Let's talk about that White House coronavirus task force briefing. It was back for the first time actually in 90 days. But it was only President Trump on the podium, no Dr. Fauci, Dr. Birx, or even Mike Pence. The president had a bit of a different tone. He admitted this pandemic is likely going to get worse in this country before it gets better. He finally really saying people should be wearing face masks. He also said they are working on a strategy, which I thought felt odd to me. We're 4 months into this thing. Like, where was this 6 months ago? I don't know. We should have a plan in place. The briefing lasted about 30 minutes. It wasn't like those 2-hour briefings that we were having back in April. Baker, I know you host, of course, our politics show on Cheddar. So what did you think of his briefing last night?
I think a lot of people going into this, Jill, because you had just said we hadn't had a briefing when it came to the coronavirus in 90 days, and a lot has happened in this country in the last 90 days. We've seen a surge in cases, especially in the South, way bigger hotspots. So many hospitals now are at ICU capacity. So I think a lot of people were expecting maybe we would have Dr. Fauci, Dr. Birx, anybody to sort of give us some sort of estimate of what's happening right now in this country. And we didn't get any of that, Jill. And it was really unfortunate because we essentially got President Trump speaking the same sort of talking points that he continues to do, that, he was patting himself on the back for the China ban that he did. He continued to go after Dr. Fauci, saying that Dr. Fauci at one point didn't want people wearing face masks, which is not technically correct. Dr. Fauci did that only because he wanted to preserve face masks for hospitals early on in the pandemic. And I know there's a lot of concerning questions, Jill, about what happens with schools coming up in the fall right now as well. President Trump didn't really even address that. So there's just so many questions that people have, and the president didn't really address it. Reporters asked President Trump, where was Dr. Birx? And he had said she was outside in the back, right behind the podium, not even in the White House press briefing room. So all of that was just a bit weird, Jill. And the White House says that we're going to be getting more of these. I don't know necessarily if we need any more of these because we didn't really learn anything from them yesterday.
Baker, the back-to-school shopping season, not surprising, is off to a bit of a slow start. Of course, this is because there are still a lot of questions about whether kids will be back in the classroom in the fall. For many retailers, this is the second most important time of the year behind the holiday shopping season. On that note, though, Walmart announcing that it's going to be keeping stores closed on Thanksgiving after a Texas store supervisor suggested employees should get to enjoy the holiday with family in this crazy year.
I love this.
A good idea.
I think this is such a good idea, Jill, and it's also interesting and indicative of what our culture is like on Black Friday now. Back when Black Friday really was the hot day for everybody to go stand in line at 4 o'clock in the morning for $10 off their blenders, we weren't really buying a lot of stuff. We were buying stuff online, but not nearly to the extent that we are now. And Black Friday has kind of sort of evolved over the years. I think less and less people do it every single year because they know that they can just get everything that they want online. What's the point of going and getting up so early every year to go do this? And the negatives on all of this are now all of a sudden, all these retailers had to staff up their places literally on Thanksgiving. So a lot of these people weren't able to spend the holidays with their families. And then you take the coronavirus into account, Jill. You don't want overcrowding in a lot of these stores. So it just seems like this was the perfect opportunity for retailers to say, you know what, let's take a pause on Thanksgiving this year because we don't know what everything's going to look like. And while we're at it, everybody should have the opportunity to spend the day with their families instead.
Yeah, I completely agree.
All right, let's keep on this issue, by the way, because Amazon Prime Day, the other big day that everybody shops on, they're actually going to be moving that. That way they can keep workers safe and American spending sprees still going as well. Now, no date for the new Amazon Prime Day has been set yet, Jill, but the company says it is still going to happen this year. We know Amazon Prime Day, a very, very big deal for Amazon. I don't necessarily, because the day always changes. It's not like Black Friday or Thanksgiving where you know in the calendar that it's coming. The day frequently changes year to year anyway, so even though people didn't get Prime Day already in July, like they traditionally sometimes do, I don't think it's going to make as much of a difference. And if anything, if Amazon does it later in the fall, that might actually be better for them because then they can recoup some of that money and make money for the holiday season as well. As you mentioned, a big day for those retailers.
And it's basically a week. I mean, Amazon Prime Day is sort of a misnomer because it's turned into like a week of deals.
Oh, yes. You have Taylor Swift performing concerts on Prime Day like she did last year. Yeah.
But I've never actually bought anything on Prime Day. Every time, like none of the deals were anything that I wanted.
Yes. They're like $2 off of a Kindle. People have always famously said it's like Amazon's garage sale because it's just like they're getting rid of all of the stuff that they're trying to clear out in preparation for the new items to come in. But listen, I mean, I got a Kindle paperweight, I think it's what it's called, a few years ago. I love it, but literally I think I saved $3 for it, so it wasn't worth like holding off for that one day to go and get it, you know?
But I guess you felt good at the time. You felt like you were taking part in something.
So true.
Microsoft, by the way, started 2020. They had a bold plan to become carbon negative by 2030. Now the company announcing this new coalition of global companies. The goal is to catalyze this shift away from fossil fuels. This is called Transform to Net Zero. Some of the names behind it are Mercedes-Benz, Microsoft, as I said, Nike, Starbucks, Unilever, and Wipro. So you got some big names, and a push, of course. We're seeing that not only do these companies want to do well for the environment, but it's part of their branding, right? These days, you have to, seem to be socially conscious.
Not to be outdone, Jill, when Microsoft announced this yesterday, also Apple announced that they too were going to become a carbon neutral company by the year 2030, and that involves all of their products in terms of how they, all the things that they create. So it's interesting. You're 100% right. Company by company having to take these initiatives to become more carbon neutral. The tech industry always seems to be the one that's usually first in line to do that. The banks are now starting to get behind it as well. You mentioned Starbucks and others, but it's usually always the tech companies that start that domino effect.
I'm laughing because Apple's like, we're going to be carbon neutral. Microsoft's like, we're going carbon negative.
Yeah,
you think neutral's far enough?
Got
it's
them, yeah. We're going to be, and Cheddar, we're going to be carbon positive by tomorrow, so it'll be great. All right, on the issue
of Greta Thunberg, right? She got an award. What's going on there?
She did. I mean, by the way, she's won every award ever, created anyway. The 17-year-old Swedish climate activist received another accolade. This, Jill, is a first ever Gulbenkian Prize for Humanity. Interestingly, this award gets her $1 million in euros, but she says she's actually going to donate that to organizations fighting climate change, which is always great. But literally, she has won every single thing before she's 18 years old. It just makes the rest of us be like, oh God, what have I done with my life before I was 18?
By the way, I feel like they're just making up prizes.
Oh, yes.
I mean,
yes.
This is the first ever of the award. They're just like, what could we do to honor Greta Thunberg? And by the way, what deserves the accolade.
Totally.
I'm just like, I'm glad you had to read this because I'm thinking, how do I even pronounce that?
Yes, the Gulbenkian Prize for Humanity. By the way, the biggest one, obviously, the only one everybody cares about, is the Time Person of the Year, which we know the president was furious at that he didn't get, and she won that one.
Some tech news. TikTok, as we know, has been under a little bit of fire for a while because of security concerns and ties to China. But in what could be even more serious for their business, they've got some competition by the way of Instagram. Instagram, which is owned by Facebook, has a new feature. It's called Reels. So it mirrors TikTok's short form video editing and sharing platform. Instagram has famously copied other social app ideas, like from Snapchat. They took the stories and Periscope. A lot of questions if Reels is going to live up to the hype, but it's a shrewd move on their part.
And by the way, not unexpected. We know Facebook tends to copy their rivals, as you just mentioned. Apparently, this is going to allow you to play a few second clips of music. You can basically repost somebody else's music video while also remixing it, similar to the things that are really popular on TikTok. But what's interesting, Jill, is even when Snapchat and when Instagram copied Snapchat, everybody thought that was going to be the death of Snapchat. If anything, Snapchat has thrived during the pandemic. They've been bringing in more new users. So even though we might want to start writing the death knell for TikTok because Instagram's copying them, if anything, they could just copy Snapchat's playbook and say, listen, Snapchat's been able to still be a successful company during all this. Having said all of that, though, there is still a lot of national security concerns out there with TikTok, and that is something that Snapchat has not had to fight with.
You make such a good point about Snapchat because everyone thought that the stories was going to be, Snapchat killer. But I'm at the point, I don't know about you, but when I'm on Instagram, I basically just look at stories.
Oh, yeah,
I don't
me
even
too.
remember.
Me too.
And I remember when they first came out, and I remember Andy Cohen, who we both love from Bravo. I remember he did a story and he was like, is this what a story is? And I felt the same way. I'm like, what is this new feature at the top?
And now
but that's really my primary way of using it. And I do agree. I don't know if TikTok users who are teens and younger than the Facebook and Instagram demographic, I don't know if Reels, this new feature, is going to make them then say, oh, you know what, let's just go to Instagram. But it'll at least be cool for us old folks, I guess, that we can be on Instagram.
You are 100% right, because if anything, when Snapchat was copied by Instagram, if anything, it stopped me using Snapchat as often as I did because I got the same satisfaction on using the same thing on Instagram. But I don't think, obviously, we saw from the numbers, those people from Snapchat didn't go, a lot of them, those younger ones, didn't go to Instagram. I think it's going to be the same thing with TikTok, that the TikTok users are going to stay on the platform, and maybe this is just something good for the old folks like me and you who are using Instagram. They're like, oh, look at us, we're just so hip with our TikTok, copycat on Instagram.
If you see me doing some type of dance, lip syncing or whatever, just you turn it off because it's going to be painful.
Have
It's
you
not
ever,
my
you know
strength.
what's so funny is so many of my friends who have kids are obsessed with TikTok. Like, it's so
Yeah.
crazy. The dances, the music, all that stuff. And so it's funny just to like watch it from a kid's or from a young person's perspective, like how fascinated they are with TikTok and this whole world that they have on it.
And I wonder if they're thinking, why are all these parents dancing on TikTok? Or I wonder if they think it's cool.
You know,
Um,
I say all the time, my husband is also like obsessed with TikTok, and he has this idea in his head that he wants to become a TikTok millennial influencer. Like, I'm like, no old person is going to make money off of TikTok like you. You just got to do it off of Instagram because the kids don't care about you, you know?
Go retro. Do it on Facebook.
Yes, exactly. Go on MySpace if you have to.
All right, Baker, really quickly. Women's soccer heading to the City of Angels in 2022. The National Women's Soccer League has awarded an expansion team to the city. By the way, they're already home to 11 pro sports teams. That team for Los Angeles is going to be owned and led by a group that's made up of mainly women, including actress Natalie Portman and Eva Longoria, soccer players Mia Hamm, Abby Wambach, venture capitalist Karen Nortman. So there's a lot of big names behind this soccer team. And I also appreciate that 2022 is their start season. And that feels realistic in what we're going through right now.
100%. And LA, by the way, famous for having celebrities be big owners. Will Ferrell, Nomar Garcia-Parra, and a bunch of other people brought the LA Football Club to Major League Soccer in Los Angeles. Magic Johnson, famously one of the big owners of the LA Dodgers. So the city of LA has a very big history, a rich history of having famous celebrities become owners of sports leagues, which is amazing. And the best part of all this, it's an all-women ownership group of this team, which is even better.
I do wonder in New York if J-Lo and A-Rod are going to buy the Mets. Do you think that's going to happen?
That's the big question. Will they do it? I think A-Rod would be an amazing owner of the team, and I just want J-Lo to go to those games more frequently. But do you want me to tell you a funny story about Natalie Portman? My husband's first kiss was Natalie Portman when they were in school together before they went to camp.
No way.
Isn't it the weirdest story ever?
Wait, that is so funny. Well,
Yes.
I grew up right in the town next to her.
I know. That's the reason why I said it to you, because
It's
apparently
like a little Jewish geography.
Exactly. So
And
apparently
your
she's
husband.
from the same area that you and Jared are from, and I like to tell everybody that my husband's first kiss was an Oscar winner, because my first kiss was definitely not an Oscar winner.
All right, Baker, I think we should end it there.
Yes, that's a good one.
Definitely. You know what? After all that, Baker, maybe Jared, your husband, can be a TikTok influencer.
Yes, maybe. You know what? That's true. That is a good, optimistic view on all of this. He would love to hear that.
Don't count them out.
Yes, he will.
All right. All right, everybody. That's what you need to know for Wednesday, July 22nd.